Hey guys, I'm Dr. Paul Lynch.
I'm Dr. Tori McJunkin.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of The Pain Show. It's been a few weeks, and by a few weeks I mean
Years, maybe.
500 weeks since we've done a show.
Yep.
Those of you that have watched us over the years,
We've gotten a lot older and had a lot more children since then, but we're back. So we're excited to introduce you to new content and tell you all about the things going on in the pain world right now.
Dr. McJunkin and I have been best friends since we were 18.
Yep.
We met, we were freshmen in college many, many years ago, the fall of 1994. Tori and I, and we're just going to call each other by our first name for the rest of the video because we're doctors. But we became good buddies on the very first day of college and started studying together. And
we were both pre-med,
Yeah.
so we had almost the same schedule. So we had all the classes that you would have.
I took the advanced classes and you were taking the...
That's true, yeah. I was in remediation, but we had all the same classes, and then so we started studying together. We were on the same floor, and we both had the same dream.
The honest truth of my joke about the advanced classes, the reason I became friends with Tori is because on the very first test, he got the highest grade in the class, and I was like, I need to be friends with that guy.
Yep. Paul got the lowest grade, and I decided I want to be friends with that guy.
Did I mention it was pre-calculus?
Yep,
and
that's
so
right.
we were in the same class. Honestly, Dr. McJunkin got the highest grade in the class, and I went to him and was like, hey, you got to help me with this class. This is kind of hard. And so we actually became really good friends. In today's episode, this is our first episode, honestly, guys, in 10 years. We used to do the pain show. We did education on everything from epidural steroid injections to radiofrequency ablation. But we wanted to come back and for our first show kind of tell the story of how we became pain docs.
Yeah. So, I think it's good to say that, we have so much history together because we were kind of best friends in college studying. And then, I think almost miraculously, we both got into medical school at the same time.
At the same school.
Same school, same time. Yeah. Paul lived in like the apartment across the way from me.
Yeah.
We would kind of study together a little bit in medical school.
Yeah.
And
you studied in medical school?
I studied a little bit. Yeah. So we studied together, and it was funny because both of us had like these different dreams for our life.
Yeah.
So I think I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I was thinking about emergency medicine, and then Paul was thinking about psychiatry.
Yeah, my whole life I wanted to be a psychiatrist. My dad is a therapist, and he works with us today, which is pretty cool. Any of our patients that are watching, maybe they've seen my dad, Larry Lynch. And I grew up wanting to be like him. I read all of his books as a kid. My dad is not a doctor, but he's a licensed clinical social worker. I wanted to go to medical school and be a psychiatrist. And so, you and I have talked about this many times over the year, but I was actually a psychology major in undergrad. I matched in psychiatry, you matched.
In emergency medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny, my dad, is a naturopathic doctor and a chiropractor, and he also sees patients with us at the clinic, which is really pretty
It's cool that we get to work with our dads.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually.
And now that they're getting older, it's getting harder because my dad's talking about retiring, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Never.
We need you for...
Yeah.
My dad's 72 this year.
Yeah, my dad's been going for 50 years. But that's why I got into
incredible.
medicine. I went to work with him, saw what he was doing, and I'm like, this is amazing. And people, his patients, Doc, you're the only one who could help me. Like, it was just so monumental that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, Dr. McJunkin, Tori, and I both matched. Anyone who understands the match process, it's not an easy thing. We went through a program. We ranked all of our top choices. They ranked their top choice. I was number one, of course, and then I'm just kidding. And then we chose. So I was signed up to go to my residency program in psychiatry in New York City.
Yep,
and
that's
you
right.
were
I was going to do
ER.
emergency medicine. Yep.
And our lives were kind of set. And as I say sometimes, and then life happened.
Yep, that's right.
So I was about 3 weeks from graduating medical school, and I got a call that my mother-in-law had been diagnosed with cancer, and it was a rapidly progressive form of pancreatic cancer, and she was in terrible pain. And I was a medical student, and the family reached out to me to see if I had any suggestions of new cutting-edge techniques for pain. And of course, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about pain management. We had no training in pain in medical school, but I went to Oklahoma where she was, and I saw her in the hospital. And I quickly found out that she had 7 fractures in her spine, that she was suffering with spinal pain, and she also had tumor in her belly. She had abdominal pain, And I started researching these options, and late one night, a weekday, I found these different procedures that might help her. I found that you could put a balloon in her bone and blow it up and restore height and cement and stabilize her bone. I found out that even her belly pain, there were procedures we could do for that. So I went over to your house. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah, I remember clearly. So Paul came over to my house, and I think it was pretty late in the evening.
It's like midnight, I think.
Yeah.
I'm close to it.
And I already,
it was the old days. We stayed up late.
I already knew, about his mother-in-law and all the stuff that she was going through and Paul doing research. But he came over and he had all these pages he had printed off the internet. And it was off a website that talked about these new kind of innovative pain procedures to help people with really bad chronic pain.
Yeah.
And so he came into my house with this big packet of paper. He's like, I know what I want to do with my life. And he slaps this big stack of papers down. And then I didn't quite believe him at first. And I was like, okay, yeah, tell me about that. And then you did.
From my perspective, I threw it on the table. I was actually shocked that Tori answered the door because I think it was like midnight. And like I say, just to be really clear, Tori and I have basically lived in the same city for the last 27 years. And so he was right in town with me, right in the town where my mother-in-law was. I went over like midnight, he answers the phone or the door, and I throw it on the table. I'm like, this is what I want to do in my life. And then to this day, I won't forget the next couple of minutes. Like Tori looks through the sheets of paper, reads it all. He's like, oh, stops on the vertebroplasty, kyphoplasty. I had one on spinal cord stimulation, which we're going to talk about in future shows. I had some printouts, I think, on percutaneous discectomy and radiofrequency ablation. Yeah. Tori reads it all and then looks at me and is like, me too, right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. Yeah, so... Yeah,
just like a best friend.
It was pretty funny because I read all that stuff and I think it just like totally resonated with me because I told you my dad's a chiropractor and naturopathic doctor and I saw him like helping people who are in pain.
Yeah.
And I saw that and this was like the medical cutting edge version of that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, that's actually what I've been looking for. But like Paul said, we didn't have any exposure at all to pain or any of those kinds of things in medical school. I think because the specialty is so new.
Right.
And it's a pretty small specialty. Yeah. So he showed me all that stuff and I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I want to do that too. And then that was the time where he didn't believe me.
I didn't believe him at all. I thought he was screwing me. I'm like, no, like, bro, like, we're going to graduate medical school in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is dropping out of psychiatry, somehow figuring out how to scramble into anesthesiology, and then doing extra training in pain management. This is going to be crazy disruptive.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, it was. I think it like really resonated with me. I think it was an opportunity to work with Paul potentially. Like we didn't actually talk about that then, but but it resonated with me, and it seemed like this is like that's the direction or the calling that I feel like I had on my life too.
Yeah, and in all honesty, it probably took us 30 minutes of back and forth, like, bro, I'm really serious. Are you really going to do this? Yeah, I'm really going to do it. Like, when are we going to do it? Are we going to call him tomorrow? Like, we got to call the dean. We got to figure out how to do this. Like, after we figured out we were serious, we probably stayed up till 3 or 4 in the morning, talking about it, brainstorming. I like to make a joke that back then I'd stay up till 4 in the morning. Now I wake up at 4 in the morning.
Right.
So I'm a lot older now. But we went through the whole thing, and then the next step was we had to tell the dean.
Yeah. So then, so we both made an appointment to talk with the dean of the medical school, and both of us are nervous, and I think both of us had talked to like our families and each other, trying to give each other support. So then Paul, I think, talked to the dean first.
Yeah, so I go in the room first, and to say we were nervous is an understatement. We had spent like our whole lives getting accepted into programs so that we could be doctors, and now we are dropping out and starting all over and just praying to God that we're going to somehow, if this is really God's will, and we spent a lot of time praying and talking about it. I talked to your dad a lot, who's always been a mentor of mine. Like, this is our moment. So I walk in the room, I sit down with the dean, and I'm like, and he wanted to talk to us one at a time. And so
that's right.
I walk in, I'm like, I told him what's been going on, and I want to drop out of psychiatry, and I'm going to become a pain doc. And I told him the whole plan, and he's like, that's not happening. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And he's like, well, you can't really do that. It's not how it works. You've already committed. What we need you to do is do a year of psychiatry, and then if you still feel this way at the end of the year, then we're going to help you transfer. And I was like, that seems really reasonable. Okay, fine. So I'm not doing it. So I walk back out, and I look at Tori, and he's like, what did he say? Well, he said no. And Tori, though, I don't know, you can tell your side, but my memory is you were like, bull crap. Like, we're doing this. So tell him from your perspective.
Yeah,
I actually want to know what you said to him when you went in the room.
Yeah, so I think I went in, talked to the dean right after Paul, and I think, he had said, oh yeah, I just talked to Paul.
Did you threaten him?
No. So then he said, same thing he said to you, we want you to go ahead and finish you have a commitment, we want you to do at least 1 year. And then I just said, well, that puts them in a really strange position too, because then they're missing out on a doctor for the second year of that program, which is harder to find than the first year. And I'm like, we feel like this is really the right thing. Like, we've thought about it, prayed about it, talked with each other, talked with other people, got a lot of wisdom.
Right.
And this is like actually our life calling. Like, we're sorry that we came to this late.
Right.
But this is what we're doing. And then the dean was like, okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Literally one of the best moments of my life. We were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And Tori came out, and I'm like, what did he say? And Tori's like, he said, yes, he's going to help us. And so, that was the beginning of our stress. We had to write letters, and we had to explain to our programs, and, to kind of fast forward it, I think God had his hand on the whole thing the whole time. Not only do we get into good internship programs, but we got into two of the best anesthesiology programs in the United States. I went to NYU.
Yep, I went to Iowa.
Had wonderful training, and then we came back together at what was one of the best pain management fellowships in the country, which is Texas Tech.
Yeah, so we, there was Harvard and, Yale, and all these programs had these really great kind of pain programs. But Texas Tech in the middle of Lubbock was like one of the most famous ones, and had like several really famous people who started the specialty and really like invented all these new things. They were very innovative, cutting edge, and they were like right at the edge of trying to like help people who had really bad problems. And I think I did a rotation there, and I think you did a rotation after me there, right?
I did,
Yeah, and I think they loved Paul. And I think they kind of liked me. And
I think they loved you too.
And I think it was amazing. So we both got into this, like,
they took 3 people in the summer of 6, and they took both of us as 2 of the 3.
So then, we started our training. And it was funny because we both did anesthesia, and that was kind of the gateway to get into pain. So you learn a lot in anesthesia, but pain is actually very, very different. So we both start this like journey into pain, and I think we were like a few of the only people who did anesthesia thinking that we were going to do pain, because everyone else like stumbles upon pain.
Right.
But we knew right from the get-go that's what we wanted to do.
We knew what we wanted to do, and I think we should take a little bit of time to tell how we came here too. So Tori and I looked at the whole country, and we knew we wanted to start a practice together. And we knew we wanted to live somewhere warm, and I like to say Phoenix definitely fits that bill. It's summertime right now. And so we looked at everything, and your dad was here seeing patients for, at that time, probably 35 years.
Yeah, that's right.
50 years now, as you said.
That's right.
And we said, why don't we just go to Phoenix? And we'll work with your dad, and my dad might come work with us. And we started planning that during our fellowship. And I think one of the funny parts of the story, for me, is we were going to launch a clinic, but we had no idea how much work it was going to be, getting all the insurances, doing all that. So July of 2007 came, and we were contracted with exactly 0 insurances. Do you remember that?
So we're finishing up, and we're not on any plans. We don't have any money. We're like, just had like this dream.
Really want to stress that we had no money.
That's very true.
We owed lots of money. And we had no idea what we were going to do. And so we started calling around, and what I think is kind of funny is I am an incredibly literal person, very black and white. So I called every single anesthesiology department in town. I'd say, hey, this is Paul Lynch, and my buddy Tori McJunkin, we're anesthesiologists, and we need a job for 90 days. And they'd be like, what? What are you talking about? We don't have jobs for 90 days. And I was like, well, we're not on any insurances yet, but we're starting to practice. We just need a job for like 90 days. They're like, no, we don't give 90-day jobs. And there's 2 of you? This makes no sense. And so I keep calling around, and I literally called like 7 hospitals. I called Banner, and I called St. Joe's, and I called Mayo. And everyone, they didn't really laugh at me, but they were very kind of astonished at my request. So then I get a call back a couple days later from the chairman at Mayo Clinic, and he's like, you're not going to believe this. You're the kid that wants a job for 90 days, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you by any chance do regional anesthesia? I was like, yeah, I did tons of regional anesthesia at NYU, and I'm a pain doc, and I love that. And he's like, well, our director of regional anesthesia just went on 90 days of maternity leave, and it's exact days you ask for a job, and we think maybe it's a sign or something.
Yeah.
And so, do you want the job? And so I was like, sure, I'll take this job. And then they call back a couple weeks later, and they're like, we have a job for your buddy as well.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
when we first came to town,
right. Yep.
right, we started at Mayo Clinic, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So we started just very bare bones. We
Yeah.
rented office space from another doctor.
Yeah.
We, had been thinking about this kind of dream for, I would
Yeah.
say, years at this point, because
Yeah.
we started way back in medical school, and we'd been thinking and learning, and so obviously we didn't learn about the insurance companies, but
They didn't tell us you were supposed to sign up for the
Yep.
insurances early.
so then it was great working at Mayo Clinic. We kind of worked with some of the best doctors in the country
Yeah, for
there.
sure.
And we got to, bring some of the new innovation, new
Yeah.
techniques, especially in the pain world when we worked in the pain clinic there. But on the side, we were starting our own pain practice, and we
Yeah.
were working he would work one week, I would work the next week,
Yeah.
and kind of going back and forth, and then just kind of grew the practice.
So I think for our first episode back in 10 years, I think we did a pretty good job of telling people kind of our background and who we are, why we went into pain. If you guys join us for next week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the early days of how we launched Arizona Pain and our belief in comprehensive care and where it came from. And we'll even have some members from our clinic join us. But guys, thank you so much for
thanks a lot.
joining us for our first pain show in 10 years. And I hope you'll join us on our journey as we educate you about pain management.
Thanks so much.